All right. Thank you very much, David. Good afternoon. And thank you for taking the time, particularly at this point in the semester. I know everybody's running on fumes at the moment, but thank you for coming out to support the Writing Across the Curriculum workshops. And this is the last workshop of 2023. And today we have a group of people from Kennesaw State University in Georgia coming to talk to us about ways they incorporate AI into writing instruction. So I have a few bios to read as they were sent to me. So Jeanne Beatrix Law is a professor of English and director of first-year writing at Kennesaw State University in Georgia. Her research interests include social justice-driven archival and historiographical recoveries, practical applications of generative artificial intelligence, and the intersections of these two passions with student-focused pedagogies centered on digital literacies. She has authored numerous chapters and collections from Routledge, Southern Illinois University Press, and Purdue University Press. She is the co-author of The Writer's Loop, an innovative guide to college writing that infuses digital literacy with justice-informed readings. She has presented her Gen AI work at Open Educa-Berlin, the SUNY Council on Writing, Feminisms Rhetorics, and the Conference on Community Writing. Her co-authored chapter on students' perceptions of Gen AI was accepted to Computers and Composition special issue on AI. She is also a part-time dog trainer, South Park binger, and companion human to a service doodle named Henck. Right. Next, we have James Blakely, who is a second-year professional writing student at Kennesaw State University in Kennesaw, Georgia, focusing on rhetoric and composition studies. There, his research examines the intersections of digital rhetorics, cultural studies, and composition pedagogy, dealing specifically with AI literacies and integrating emerging technologies into first-year composition classrooms. He has published collaborative research analyzing institutional and student perspectives on AI writing technologies in outlets such as Computers and Composition, and the Sweetland Digital Rhetoric Collaborative's blog Carnival. Additionally, he has presented research on broader topics of digital rhetoric and writing studies at the Conference of College Composition and Communication and the SUNY Council on Writing, among others. James currently serves as teacher of record for first-year composition at Kennesaw State University, instructing two sections of English 1101 and English 1102 per semester. He previously held positions as a graduate research assistant, design and accessibility assistant, and an undergraduate supplemental instructor of composition. All right, next, Dr. Tamara Powell is a Mentimeter genius. She is also a professor of English at Kennesaw State University. She received her Ph.D. from Bowling Green State University in Ohio, where she specialized in African American women's literature. Her research interests include open educational resources, pedagogical strategies that support student success in underrepresented student groups, and lesbian narrative. She has led webinars and workshops worldwide on accessible and open course design and OER for student success. She has also worked extensively on MOOCs and gamification of course content to cultivate student engagement. And last but certainly not least, Professor Elizabeth Hetzel is a lecturer of English at KSU. In her pedagogies, she combines empathetic teaching strategies with innovative course content to meet students where they are in their learning and in their comfort zones. She is engaged with generative AI in her classrooms with students, using their knowledge of it as a critical tool to gauge ethical use and practice. Before joining KSU, Professor Hetzel taught in secondary learning environments where she focused on preparing students in transition to write for a variety of genres, styles, and contexts. Elizabeth Hetzel first joined Kennesaw State University's first-year composition program in 2015, teaching evening classes around her full-time work as a high school English teacher. 7 years later, she became a lecturer, teaching primarily students on KSU's STEM campus. An unwavering innovator, Elizabeth provides her students with a variety of engaging themes such as food and culture, literacy, sustainability, and the intersection of AI and the humanities. She is committing to making the transition to academia accessible for first-year students by using open educational resources, developing service learning experiences, and incorporating field research. She enjoys cooking, gardening, hiking, and sipping wine or coffee on her patio. So with that, I will turn it over to our guest speakers.
Thank you, Professor Wen. Can everyone see our screen?
I see your picture.
Oh, nope. Let me see what I can do.
Wait, you want me to share the screen, right?
You can if you want to,
Jeannie,
Tammy. Yeah.
because I'm running your Mentimeter.
Yep.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's the wrong one. You're right. Okay. Screen 2. Now, do you see the presentation?
Yes,
Okay,
thank
great.
you.
Thank
Yay.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So thanks so much for that introduction. We are just excited to be here. And also you will find us to be quite a collaborative bunch. So we, in addition to presenting and having our conversation with you all today, we're super interested in multiple perspectives and collaborating with colleagues across diverse fields, across writing in the disciplines in WAC, as well as in English and writing studies. And that's just kind of what we bring to this. So we'll just have our chat today, and we're going to do Mentimeters along the way. We're going to present some data that we've done with students at KSU. We're going to present some really cool peer review uses of AI. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the pitfalls of AI and what that can mean ethically for students and instructors. And so we'll do all that together, and hopefully we'll just have a blast while we're doing it. So Tammy, can I advance the slides, or do you have to, don't you? Yes, thank you. So you all know this, right? We're in November 2022. It seems like generative AI has been with us for many, 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 many years. And Bill Gates talks about it as the most transformative thing that's happened in human communication since we started using iOS and other operating systems. But there is this exigence for engaging in AI discussion for assignments such as peer review, right? And there are 3 things that we really know about generative AI. It feels like it's been with us forever, but it's only been with us from a mass-produced perspective, y'all, for a year. And so just sit with that for a hot minute and think about it, because it blows my mind that it feels like it's been forever. But for most of us, it's been since November of last year that we were in when we were introduced to this. So here's some things that we know from our research. Our students know about generative AI. Our students use generative AI, and Gen AI is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Oh, and next slide, Tammy. I'm so sorry. We have some learning objectives for today, just to frame our conversation together. We're going to, after this, after our webinar, you'll be able to discuss key elements of generative AI use in interdisciplinary writing context. You'll be able to critique aspects of the presented peer review assignments. You'll be able to recognize students' attitudes towards generative AI in college learning environments. And you'll also be able to mentally sketch your own ideas for AI-infused assignments in your own courses. Dr. Powell, what do we expect to learn today?
I'm probably going to get a lot better at Zoom. That's my personal goal. So if you will join us at menti.com, your phone is great to do this with. And if you've never used Mentimeter before, go to menti.com and put in 89825905. And you can type right in, what do you expect to learn today? So it's a open answer. Oh, we've got 2 already. Checking for AI plagiarism. I'd like to develop strategies for helping students to use AI in a productive, ethical manner. How to teach AI for my students to engage with diverse perspectives on AI use. These all sound very exciting. How generative AI can help with the student peer review. To help students use AI to work for them. Using AI as a tutor to guide students.
That's great.
So to help students learn effective, promoting. All right. Anybody got one coming up?
Yeah.
Oh, and prompting.
That's
Okay.
always a really great thing. Dr. Powell and I are presenting at Open Educa-Berlin about this, and we would love to come back and do a webinar. We have a 3-hour workshop at OEB in Berlin about prompt engineering, and it is literally the basics. It is taking, if you know nothing about prompt engineering, by the end of our webinar, you will be able to use it in business writing, rhetorically, effectively. We've got this really cool, we call it a rhetorical shot when we do prompt engineering. So if you all are interested in learning more about that, we'd love to come back next semester and talk with you all about it again.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Powell. Cool. So let me give you a little bit of context for why we really feel like working with AI and understanding generative AI is important. So at Kennesaw State University, much like UDC, we share a lot of the same student demographics, right? We're just scaled up a little bit more in size, but our students seem very similar. The context for our study, what we did is we're still in the process of surveying the more than 8,000 students who are coming into first year writing this year at KSU. And we are surveying them about their thoughts and attitudes towards AI. And we'll present a couple of those interesting findings today. So KSU is a public R2 doctoral granting school. Founded in 1963. We have a total enrollment of about 43,000, and 39,000 of those are undergraduates, 8,600 first-year students, and we teach about 350 FYC courses a semester, taught by more than 100 faculty. So we have a really large program, and this was a really good context for a study that we think could be replicated across multiple contexts at multiple universities. Our student diversity, as you see here, even though I say, oh, we're in R2, which our president likes to say a whole lot, which is great, but we're in R2 with a comprehensive regional mission, right? We are very much a regional institution. As a matter of fact, 38% of our students identify as first-gen students, right? We have approximately a 50-50 gender split, and you'll see that more than 50% of our students self-identify as non-white. And so without being officially a minority majority serving institution, we really are. And that is where our growth is coming from students of color and students who are first-gen students. So you'll see almost 80% of our undergraduates are full-time. So that has changed for us. Back in the 80s and 90s, we were primarily a commuter school where the majority of our students did come to school part-time. And since we've grown, we've shifted that with lots of housing and things like that. But we have more of a traditional university now, with 84% of our undergraduates are aged 19 to 24. We also have a dual enrollment program for high school students, and we have more than 800 students who are enrolled in that. And those students are taking our first year composition courses. And one more quick note about the context for the study, and then I'll stop talking about all these numbers. The scholarly conversation, at least in the field of writing studies, I'd be interested to hear where it is now in your field. We are really starting to shift more towards thinking through models for pedagogical incorporation. You know, for the first 7 or 8 months, we were all very concerned about students plagiarizing and students using AI in unethical ways, and we still are concerned about that. I think it's a valid perspective. It seems like now we have a joint task force with the MLA and the 4Cs, which are our 2 big national governing bodies in writing studies and English studies. And those task forces are really starting to intervene in a discussion about how we can meet students where they are and start thinking about generative AI and its ethical use as part of our scholarly teaching. So, like I said, we have surveyed so we've gotten our response rate now up to almost 1,200 students. So this is the brand new data. I just changed this data a couple days ago. So this is not a surprise, I don't think, to anyone that 91% of our students have heard about GPT or similar generative AI programs. That's certainly not a surprise. Our methodology for doing this was a mixed method survey. We had 8 questions to gain snapshot information like the slide you just saw. We had closed questions on a 3-point Likert scale because we weren't really necessarily interested in the nuances. We wanted a snapshot of what students thought for word association. And one of the things we know about our students at KSU, they're much more likely to take a survey with a 3-point Likert scale than a 5-point Likert scale. And they're more likely to take short surveys as well. We distributed our survey through faculty teaching in English 1101, 1102. We are now looking at an August through December collection window, and we have increased that response rate to almost 1,200. So that's a good thing with the new data. We are using Qualtrics text and stats IQ analysis along with Excel data analysis and visualization. And James ran our data through Claude's Gen AI assistant to triangulate the data. And that was a very interesting a very interesting process. So we've got some really cool data triangulation going on. Cool. So now we want to ask you, and I'm going to participate. What do you think students will say?
And so we've broken this into 3 slides. Same thing, menti.com, and you probably can just advance your phone or whatever to the next question. But do you think students will say AI use is cheating?
I'm not using Menti because I'm keeping my phone off. So if you're not using Menti, are you not, is talking not an option or no?
Yeah, you can talk, absolutely. Do you think students will think AI use is cheating?
Well, I don't necessarily think that. I think it depends on how it's introduced, how it's discussed, because AI is us. It can't be cheating because AI does not exist without us.
That's a really good point. Do you think that students feel that way?
I think it depends on who you talk to. I think it depends on their majors.
Oh, wow.
I think that humanities majors might get that. I think that students who work with IT may get that. But I think that because when I say we, the general public, because we have this habit of labeling these technologies in a certain way, we sometimes demonize technology. And
True.
unfortunately, some teachers, some professors, some politicians have a habit of thinking of AI as cheating or AI as inventing something or something spacey. But AI is us. So no, not necessarily. And that's not something that I say when I talk about AI with students, because first and foremost, if AI is cheating, then that means that we can't even use grammology. We can't use any of those tools.
True. That's right.
That we use. And so when we say cheating, what does that mean? In other words, what I'm more interested in doing when I work with my students is helping them to recognize that they need to develop their own voices and learn to use the technology to their advantage. And so even when you're quoting, paraphrasing, or summarizing other people, you need to give credit to where credit is due. And if you used AI in helping you to generate something, sure, acknowledge it. But even in that still means that you are acknowledging that it's your voice with the use of technology.
Absolutely.
So once you do that, I don't really see the problem.
Yeah.
We have another question for you. Do students use AI in their writing?
Of
So if
course
you
they
haven't
do.
answered that one, go ahead on Mentimeter.
Of course they do. We
I
all
do.
I'm using I'm using it right now to help keep up with to keep up with the conversation and to help
Right.
to take notes and whatnot, because I'm going to go back and look at this as I build some of my other courses. And so, of course, and I don't tell students to not use AI, because that's not fair and it's not realistic. And it's not a reflection of the fact that we live in 2023. We live in
That
the
is so
21st.
true. That is
So
so true.
I would
One of
never.
the things, and I know that Tammy, we can look at most people do think students are using AI in their writing. That's interesting.
Yeah, it looks like it's 100%
Yeah,
of our team
100%.
here. All
Yeah.
right, one more question there. How do you think the students feel about it?
I think it depends on how you frame the question. I think most students don't really attach a particular emotion to it. It's a utility. I think that I think that students only become conscious of it or become aware of it when their instructors make note of it, and depending upon how those instructors react. And so you have some who are welcoming of it and some who are not willing to accept the reality that technology is a part of education. It's a part of K through 12. It's a part of higher education.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it looks like we've got additional participants saying that they think positively toward AI use. So it looks like you're in good company there. All right. Well, thank everyone for sharing your input. Here's what the student said. Jeannie, take it away.
So the students at KSU, when surveyed whether or not they thought AI was cheating, 25% of them said yes, 16% said no, and 59% said maybe. And what's interesting is we had a follow-up qualitative question to all of these questions we're about to ask, and we're going to share some of the sentiment analysis that we've done with this data before we start talking about the really cool part, which is using assignments that are AI infused. But yeah, so there's what the students thought about whether AI was cheating or not. And here's what's super interesting. Students say, okay, so that was the question, if they thought it was cheating. But then we asked students if they had used GPT or similar AI assistants in their academic writing. 70% said no, never. 23% sometimes, 2% half the time, 3% most of the time, and 2% always. Well, when you add all those sometimes up, if you're not on a binary of never, well, then 30% of the time, our students have used Gen AI in their academic writing. So Dr. Turpin is absolutely right. When we talk about AI, we're really talking about it in a student-focused, a student-centered way. And if 30% of our students have used Gen AI in their academic writing, to Dr. Turpin's point, don't we have a responsibility, perhaps, as faculty members, as teacherly scholars, right, to make sure that when they're using that AI, they're doing so ethically and using it as a tool to benefit them in their workplace writing, in their academic writing, and so forth. And so we also asked students, we asked them to tell us if they used GPT or similar AI assistants in their personal writing. And that was an interesting, that was a little bit less of the time. 67% said never, and I'm sorry, more of the time. And 33% said, yeah, I've used it in my personal writing. So we're seeing a little bit of tracking between personal and academic writing. And what that said to us was that we really needed to develop some AI-infused assignments that were also based off of open educational resources, because OER at our university is a very important tool that we as a university provide to we use to help students to minimize their financial burden when they get out of school, right? So in terms of our mandate as scholarly teachers, I think this data really shows that if we've got 30 to 33% of our students who are using it, then certainly we need to be engaging with Gen AI in ways that encourage our students to use it, to, like Dr. Turpin said, to their benefit. And so we also asked students whether they thought AI was the future of writing. 29% yes, 29% yes, 28% no. Those were a little closer. And 43%, of course, maybe. And what's interesting about this data is that when you perform a qualitative analysis, a textual analysis, or sentiment analysis, which we're going to show really briefly next, you'll see where that maybe comes in. And we'll really kind of see where our college students are in this conversation. And I don't know about you all, but in the field of writing studies, I feel a little bit like what Dr. Turpin was saying. I think sometimes students get left out of the conversation when we're having these disciplinary conversations about generative AI. And for me, you know, students are the reason I do what I do. And so I think students should be involved in these conversations, and they should be, student-centered. So here's some things that students said in their qualitative data. Many students talked about how it was their words that they put into the bot, that they're going to use it in their work lives. Some students felt like it was unfair if students used AI to get a better grade. And then students on a whole really did think that it was okay to use generative AI to brainstorm and create, but not to copy from. And that's kind of where we get into this idea of prompt engineering, which is another webinar I said we'd be happy to come and present. We're presenting it at a couple of other places. So prompt engineering is really this idea where students can then use generative AI in ways that are not just throwing something in to Bard or Claude or GPT and saying, please write me a paper on this, right? So we're thinking about different ways to use it that are more rhetorical. This is a lot on a slide. And we will have the slides for you all, and we're happy to certainly chat afterwards about this. So I want to make sure we can get to the meat of why everyone's here. But so we ran a sentiment analysis on what students thought about AI use in writing, and about 40 to 45% were skeptical or negative. And even though in our survey we did not use the word plagiarism, students used the word plagiarism when they responded in their qualitative data. And I think that shows where we are in academia right now, is that students appear to be thinking through, or maybe they've been talked to by professors and they're thinking through cheating as plagiarism, and they're actually calling it out as plagiarism, which we thought was super interesting. Students also thought that there might be an over-reliance on it. Students were concerned about job loss for human writers due to AI. Many of these negative sentiments, when we ran the sentiment analysis, categorized AI use for entire assignments as cheating, right? And they worried about it in terms of creative expression. And again, this is where effective or rhetorical prompt engineering can really make a difference in terms of the use of AI. And I think we can get to a more positive view of AI if we can teach students how to effectively and rhetorically prompt engineer to use AI to their advantage in writing. So about the same, half of the responses had neutral or positive sentiment. The views on AI were diverse, but a significant number of students articulated concerns about negative impact. And so the summary of that would be that we really need to be sure that we're ensuring responsible and ethical AI use, which really forces us as instructors to engage with students as we're learning prompt engineering and these new technologies to ethically use generative AI. So Yes, that's the same number, but almost half said yes, the future of writing. We're really concerned about loss. Again, this is kind of this is a different question, but you can see the trends in the data from the sentiment analysis. The sentiment analysis shows us that students really are thinking overarchingly so about generative AI, either positive, negative, neutral, in very specific ways. Creativity, replacing my job, less effort from other students. So they're worried about whether or not they're going to get the grade that other students who use AI would get. Some students are concerned about how we're incorporating AI into writing as a society. And while a lot of those views differed, many students in this sentiment analysis, in the words that they gave us to analyze, the word hope came about, hope that human qualities like creativity and authenticity can be maintained if we are using AI ethically and responsibly. So there is that sense of it could be the future, it might be the future if we can figure out a way to collaboratively do machine and human writing.
All right, so we'd like to ask you, what is one assignment, low stakes or high stakes, that you can think of that you might use that would appeal to students and that uses AI? So again, you can just advance probably, and it is a free answer. See, discussion forums, peer reviewing. I've actually used an AI skybox generator for students to create their own virtual environments. Nice. Brainstorming, designing assignments alongside students in AI, experimented with a pre-writing / brainstorming assignment involving ideas that responded to a major essay prompt, and students did well with it overall. Analyzing text.
May I also add that I do welcome students using their own AI tools to record. I use one, Phantom. I don't know if you all have noticed that. A lot of our students may not necessarily be on campus.
Oh, okay.
Right. You have a lot of students, for instance, you got a lot of students who are working while taking these courses. And so whether we're meeting face to face or whether we're meeting on Zoom or WebEx, students need to be able to use their own tools. And of course, I share the transcript, I share the recording with students so that they can go back and review and encourage them to use those tools to be able to ask questions or to generate ideas.
And I think you bring up another wonderful point, which is the idea of accessibility. So what you've just described has multiple entry points for ADA accessibility for students.
Yes. Yes.
Love it.
Yes.
These are great.
So we've got some great answers here. I like all of them.
Y'all are really experimenting with
creative.
AI. Cool.
Yeah, I'd actually love to hear more about these.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So
will we have access to these materials at the conclusion of this meeting?
Yes. Yes, so you'll have access to the PowerPoint as well as the assignments that we're that we're going to show and talk about. So absolutely.
Right.
Happy to do it.
Thank you.
Sure. So at KSU, we've thought about some different instructional and learning possibilities. And this is where we're going to get into starting to talk about assignments, and for you to think about some of the assignments you have articulated that you've already done, or some things that you would like to collaborate on, or some things you're thinking about. So for us, both in writing courses and in other disciplines. Our colleagues are working with students to brainstorm, right, information gathering, selecting a topic, narrowing down the topic, and using AI to help with that. Scaffolding, right, starting with that low stakes work to build up to an essay or to build up to an analysis or build up to a project. Connecting. And one of the assignments that we may have time to talk about today is triangulating AI's data with rhetorical prompt engineering alongside historical data or course data that's already been vetted, and asking students to get that critical thinking piece in by triangulating what AI provided versus what has already been vetted historically or in the class itself. And then finally, of course, collaborating. And you know, somebody wrote in the in the Mentimeter about creating alongside students, and I love that idea. I would love to talk more with y'all about that, because you using it to create resources in the classroom and using it in the classroom to develop assignments with students. Ooh. And so now I want to turn it over to James Blakely. He's going to talk about an innovative assignment he's got with peer reviews and AI.
Right on. Thank you so much again, James. Hi. So a lot of the work that I've done with this has come out of, I guess, a perceived imbalance in how academia versus, professional life is viewing the sort of cultural capital of these tools. It's almost to a point where the meticulous response we saw early on from more academic institutions is like, it's just not functional, recognizing how valuable these tools are to our students and where we can engage them to bring that forward. Last month alone, GPT and Bard, Llama, and Claude, which is what I'm a proponent of, those four major hitters, had over 2 billion individual interactions and over 200 million perpetually active accounts on those programs. With GPT alone, 60% of their users are under the age of 34. And that's not accounting for the large majority of student or young people that are like not actually putting in their real age, because it's not an option on those websites. So they are using these in some capacity all the time. So considering my function with 1101 and 1102, I've really tried to focus my students on prompt engineering, what that looks like, and have them recognize what effective engagement with these tools is, how they can use it to inform and not take away from their learning processes. Many of my engagements are built into sort of invention and arrangement, brainstorming, so on and so forth. Of course, recognizing the very clear pitfalls of AI and more substantive like research practices. It still does, unfortunately, hallucinate a lot of data. So thinking about how we can input student content and have that sort of dependent output, right? Interactive and flexible design that's really, really effective. And it's something that I think is a very important skill for them to learn as they continue to develop, right? So looking at this example here, I know the text is really small there, but this is an example prompt that I provide my students in a sort of peer review opportunity. So this is conducted prior to, peer-to-peer responses, kind of looking at each other's drafts. The benefit in that is that it's going to, again, save them time, but also recognizing how standardized a lot of the feedback we give in FYC is. We're seeing a lot of the same things over and over again. These systems are very capable of responding to and addressing those things, not only more effectively, but with more grace than I think we often are after having to say the same thing 40 times. So in the actual prompt here, you can see that it's going to allow students that initial feedback on their draft and direction, but also model what effective peer review focus and structure can look like, right? Claude is the system that I use for these tools. They are interesting in the fact that you can input, up to 60,000 words of ancillary, content that they can work off of, right, in relation to their own data set that they're processing from. So I am having students attach their partial drafts, right? I'm having them attach an assignment sheet and an outline if they have it, or rubrics, right, that can kind of help this system assume the role or the identity of someone that's capable of providing effective feedback there. It'll, again, I mean, it's imperative to provide students these structured prompts, right? It helps them see what that can look like, which is a really valuable tool. But it also regulates their use And in the absence of such regulation, we do see that they will, start to be like, well, I can't just use this for plagiaristic intent. But if we structure that and say, hey, this is how you can use it in that way, it's very effective. So you can see in the actual language here that you kind of have two points in this, right? And the real prompt, right, is that the feedback should point out where the draft is missing information or needs further development to match that outline narrative that is provided and the content, offering from that, concrete and actionable recommendations for revising the draft accordingly based on the data that's there. Students have really loved this, and it has, helped them create better writing thus far, right? It's a democratizing process, which I think is really effective, right? It's a recognition of that cultural capital. So that's that. The full prompt is there. You can totally go to the next one if you'd like. Okay, so this is another one. This is something that I do kind of at the beginning of most of my units, especially with the first year students. We can recognize that accountability and time management are maybe not their best qualities, or they have, a lot of things going on in their lives that might make that a challenge. So this is an idea that kind of supports pacing of class content and encourages a sort of individual organization and planning, right? We're leveraging technology to provide the student side scaffolding that I kind of am taking out of my hands or feeling like I have some sort of imperative to do that for them in any way. So you can see in the language here, I have an upcoming research paper assignment that needs to be completed by, due date, whatever that is for the unit at hand. My teacher has provided these assignment guidelines. You can then attach them. Please review the due date and guidelines and develop suggested timetables and schedules that incorporate the overall steps needed to complete the assignment, right? So they can recognize how much time is in between when you're inputting that and when the due date is, and offer rough estimates of what might be acceptable, right? And then I have students sort of reflect on this and develop what it is that they need to change in that sort of structure, right? So it gives them an effective outline. I mean, they're actively yearning for this sort of direction that's just impossible to give them all individually. But it promotes accountability because they're given this larger structure, and then they build through it through those individual skills, struggle areas, teaching time estimates, all that wonderful stuff. I think it's been really effective so far. And it's one of those things that I really think has kind of fallen on FYC, teaching them these sort of skills, but this is the way that I can do that without it kind of taking up super valuable class time. Yeah. So those are two examples of that. And I think this is Dr. Law. So
it is. Thanks, James. One of the things that I really like about how James, and this is, getting feedback from his students as well, and kind of thinking through what this looks like. James is also, well, I'll let you tell about the IRB project, because it's really cool, because you're not just giving out these assignments willy-nilly, you're beta testing them, and then you're measuring student feedback towards them, and then also measuring your DFWI rates, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm engaging in comparative analysis of those DFW rates, kind of based on what we know of the program at large, looking through those, seeing where students are actually wanting to or feeling like they're not getting to engage these, programs, what is effective to them, what isn't, where they would like to see this, and also how that relates to their sort of impressions of what would have been given and what they would like to see continuing forward. In light conversation with my students, they obviously were all kind of confused when I was like, yeah, we're going to use these things in this class, and it's great. But seeing them become comfortable with those programs and develop from them has taken a lot of load off of them in terms of just fear of being a college student and not feeling like they have something to say, or not feeling like they're up to par with what needs to be said. These are being, used as a very effective tool in enabling sort of that self-directed learning, and they're learning from the output of these systems, and I can see it sort of making its way into their individual writing, which is fun, which is just awesome. Yeah.
And if I may get in one extra plug, James's capstone in his master's program is on this work. So I know he would be more than happy to engage with other folks and talk about his results, because I think it's going to be very interesting to see the student responses and the student data in terms of their learning experience, and also being able to compare that with DFWI rates, right? And let's see if those student experiences translate into student success metrics that the university can measure. So I think it's going to be an amazing, amazing project.
Very, very plainly, I have colleagues, fellow TAs that are working in these fields in the same program that are vehemently anti-AI, and they are having more problems with plagiarism and more problems with problematic use than I have seen the entire semester, right? And that was kind of the impetus for the work that I've done with this.
Great. Absolutely. I know one of the things that we had talked about when we presented this work at SUNY, one of our colleagues at SUNY said, you know, cheater's going to cheat. I mean, that's just kind of how, and that was such a great mantra. And that's, she just kind of said that. And to me, it just really struck. I was very struck by that. The idea that, you know, we're never going to be able to stop plagiarism, and whether a student asks a friend, a girlfriend, a significant other, whomever, to write a paper, whether a student self-plagiarizes from another school or from high school, whether a student goes to Chegg or other paid sites. You know, I think that it's interesting that students who are being asked to engage with AI in ethical ways are what James is seeing at a small scale, and what we're hoping to see at a meta scale is that these students are less likely to use it to cheat because they're actually engaging with it in ways that they find productive.
And really, again, just really putting as much influence as I can on having them be transparent about their use. I have implemented just basically at the beginning of major assignments, there's just sort of a memo. If they use these technologies, they lay out in, you know, whether it's a paragraph or a few sentences, where this played the role and what this does, just kind of being transparent about how they use that. I think that's a really good ethic to establish, especially recognizing, again, how these technologies are going to continue to develop and affect our work moving forward.
And I think that would actually because I'm teaching a writing course next semester, as I do every semester, that would actually help me to address some of the issues that I run into when I ask students to put together a perspective thesis, a perspective introductory paragraph. Of course, I use the tool that I think that we all do in one form or another. The plagiarism catch, and semesters past, I would just automatically just mark low. But what I've been doing lately is meeting with students and saying, well, hey, everybody uses AI, everybody uses technology, and inevitably you're going to engage in conversation with other people, with other writers. So the question that you should be asking yourself is, where's my voice? Where do I fit? And how can I do this in a way that acknowledges that I'm engaged in a conversation? And I like your approach, which is encouraging students to mark those areas where they see other voices and whatnot, and asking them to rearrange, revise, rewrite, expand, ask further questions, develop, more keywords, more possibilities for research. I like your approach.
Thank you.
Thanks. So there's just one more quick example, and I'm going to run through this really quickly because it's something that is a very low stakes assignment that I have done. And it's about using generative AI and prompt engineering, rhetorical prompt engineering, for information literacy in a writing classroom. I have had friends in history use this. I have had friends in stats use this, friends in math use this. It can be scaled and changed by the topic to really go interdisciplinary and any type of, really go whack with it, right? So the sample topic that I use, and this is a low stakes discussion forum that for us exists and desire to learn. That's our LMS at KSU. And so I give them a sample topic And in my writing courses, we do everything very local and specific. So I don't know how much you all know about Atlanta. Atlanta, of course, played a huge role in the civil rights movement, but a lot of people don't know that it was the students at the Atlanta University Center schools who really drove the desegregation of public facilities and the Atlanta public school system in 1960 and 61. So because Kennesaw State is in a suburb of Atlanta, I like to focus my writing courses really on local civil rights. So the sample topic I use for a discussion forum is healthcare disparity. And the rhetorical prompt engineering assignment for students to do is they read and listen to an appeal for human rights, which was the manifesto for the students at Morehouse, Spelman, and Clark, and Morris Brown when they put out their demands for desegregation. So that's a historical document that is well known. It is searchable on the internet. It is in the public domain. And then I asked them to read the Centers for Disease Control report on minority health from 2022. So we have a government document, a vetted document, also a searchable PDF for accessibility purposes. And after they do that for their discussion forum, I ask them to enter into ChatGPT or Bard or Claude the following quote. So I'm putting guardrails on this for them, right? So this is a more conservative approach for using AI for those who want to use it in a different comfort zone. So I ask them to enter the text into their AI of choice, and I put it in quotes. And it's going to spit out different reasons across those different LLMs, but just very specific reasons. And then I ask them in a 500-word discussion post to answer the questions that are going to ask them to think deeply about the data from an appeal for human rights, the data from the CDC report, and the data that was given to them by the AI assistant. And they have to answer these questions, and these questions are designed to elicit critical thinking behavior, right? This idea that they can't just take what AI says verbatim, that they've got to figure out a way to triangulate it and say if it's wrong, say if it's right, what appeals, what appeals does it use, how is it effective, why or why not. So in one tiny little low stakes assignment, and you can use any topic for this and any type of data points for this, students really are getting these critical thinking skills and the information literacy skills. And this is a very conservative approach, a very low stakes approach to using it, not going all in to it. And our colleague, Elizabeth Hetzel, is going to talk a little bit more about that, because for all of the early adoption and all of the cheerleading and all the things that we're doing, there are pitfalls and there are more conservative approaches to help our colleagues and our students engage with AI within their comfort zones. And so now I'll turn it over to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Jeannie. And Tammy, if you don't mind going to the next slide, just for my talking points. I feel like a lot of things we have discussed so far have already come out. And so I just want to end some of our time giving you some things to consider and also validating some of the concerns that you have. I adopted a theme of AI in the humanities in my summer online course, and my students, informally, their concerns about AI are reflected in those survey questions, the survey data that we were presented with at the beginning of this. And, a lot of the concerns that students share are also mirrored in our colleagues, right? So if you're going to prepare to innovate your courses with AI, just like our students are kind of navigating it, I think we have to get ahead of them on this, right? And carve out time to develop our own training and to experiment and accept the trial and error of the prompt engineering that we have. So if we're going to infuse our courses with AI, it's going to require a significant investment of our time and our own research, like hands-on research. I think Dr. Turpin's point about providing, I think you called it acknowledging the assistance, is really important. And I tell my students, not just in my courses, but in their other classes, you need to begin acknowledging where you've used AI as a precautionary measure, because we're using it in our class. If you tell me where you're using it, I will support your engagement. But other instructors have just drawn a really hard line, maybe because they don't have the bandwidth to train themselves and to learn right now, or maybe because they're very concerned about the ethics. For whatever reason, that hard line for students presents them with a challenging negotiation. It's okay over here, but not okay over here. And so I think those mixed signals can be really cleared up by telling them, here's how you cite, or here's how you acknowledge your use of generative AI, and let me walk you through why this is important rhetorically. I used to, back before this is so popular, ask my literature students in particular to use a help statement. And this is a strategy I borrowed from my child who was at the Air Force Academy at the time. Their instructors assumed that they were seeking help. And so their help statement was something like, maybe I use Spark Notes to understand the analysis of 1001 Nights, or I talked to my mom about my thesis statement. It was even as simple as that. And so, inviting them, as James has, with a memo or some sort of, help statement or appendage to their works cited, where it acknowledges and cites what they've used AI for, is, I think, at the very minimum, something we can do for ourselves as well. And I think it's really important to understand basically how generative AI writes that predictive language model, just to acquaint ourselves with how AI is doing the writing on a technical level, so we can address other issues that we may see surfacing with students. For example, I'm going to drop down a little bit to addressing that sort of formulaic writing that generative AI can produce if students use it kind of indiscriminately. Like, I think we've all noticed some patterns of AI generated writing. And so I think this is a great place to speak with our students about kind of robotic sounding writing. But it's also problematic to approach them assuming they've used AI, because we have, for example, a large swath of neurodivergent students in my campus, which is the STEM campus. We also have students who have been trained, if you will, to write in a particular formula in their IB and AP classes. So we cannot just assume that something that sounds kind of formulaic or robotic is automatically AI. I think also, practicing the prompt engineering with your students, openly trying out different prompts and refining results in front of them, shows them, not only does it model, but some best practices, but it also shows them that how to get around this technology. And so maybe they're, the cheaters who are going to cheat might be a little bit more hesitant to do so. Also, y'all, I just want to mention that, again, preparing to innovate by infusing your assignments with AI, I've discovered, is a really exhausting process, because there are definitely assignments that don't go as well as planned, and so you really need to be flexible and give yourself permission to, tell yourself and your students, like, hey, this isn't working, let's retool, or let's step back. I think also the using AIs like Turnitin's plagiarism checker. Once upon a time, I think that worked really well, but it's problematic results for AI generation also creates just more conversations that we have to have with students. It used to be a little bit more black and white, and now, that percentage of AI detected writing is often inconclusive. And so I think time to, be with our students from the very beginning. It's a little bit more difficult if you're teaching online, but if you're face-to-face with your students and you can see from day one how they write and watch for those patterns, and then note any deviance from that, gives you an opportunity to converse with them and help them claim the authenticity of their human voice. So to that end, I think developing your own personal philosophy of why AI of your relationship with AI and why AI matters to you as an instructor and how it can help your students is foundational. We must do that. And then we need to protect ourselves and our time by developing very clear policies in our syllabus of how we'll deal with AI writing that hasn't been authorized by us. And so I think it's really interesting. We were in a faculty meeting yesterday, and one of the members of our academic integrity team came and talked to us, and he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, we're in the worst of it, right? Like, as far as developing policies for dealing with academic integrity and AI, it's chaos right now. So if we can be very clear about what we expect from our students, where they are and are not allowed to use AI, we save ourselves a lot of time on the other end. And then we foster a sense of support and growth. And I would argue too that it would be difficult to penalize a student right away for indiscriminate use of AI. Just treat it as you would any other learning opportunity. I do have one thing to say that was not on my prepared challenges. I think it's so interesting that our students seem to be very much concerned with the threat of AI to their creativity. And so again, empowering them to use AI as a tool, knowing that they can master it, right? It's just another technological tool. It is not out to get them. I think also supports their protection of their creative freedom. A lot of our students on the STEM campus are game designers, or they're just gamers, but they're engineering students. So they love and consume artifacts of creativity all the time, and they want to preserve that. So let's help them find creative ways to use AI and preserve their own creativity instead of feeling this sort of existential threat. So that's all.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I love your perspective, particularly. I know Elizabeth is working Elizabeth has a really good point and is working on some stuff with neurodivergence, because many of our students on that STEM campus do have neurodivergent accommodations for their writing, for their testing. And the idea that AI plagiarism detectors work off of predictive writing, and they're working off of frequency and how the frequency of words adjacent to each other, right? I know you all could probably say this more articulately than I could, but what Elizabeth said that I really, really appreciate is the idea that with neurodivergent students, they may already write that way because that's how they think. And so if we're viewing this as sort of, well, you wrote formulaically, you must be cheating, the way we approach those students is very meaningful to them. And it could mean the difference of their sense of belonging, and then their sense of actually being able to stay and maintain their college careers and go on and get and into the workplace, because we don't want to discourage them from their first year. That is such important work that you did. Yep, absolutely. So I think for us, it's about meeting students where they are. And as you heard from our panelists today, from Professor Elizabeth Hetzel, from Professor James Blakely, from me, it's really about meeting students where they are and being able to find that space where you can design an easy AI as a tool, tinker with it as James has done, and also keeping it specific and local to minimize plagiarism and increase student voice. And so we're so happy that you all hosted us today, and we wanted to wrap up with a Mentimeter to give you the last thought.
They changed positively for me. I was already there, but it actually helped to confirm. And it actually helped me relax a little bit on some of the other points. And that'll be helpful to me as I look at what students are producing right now. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, y'all. We really appreciate it. And if there's any time left for questions or thoughts, we're happy to entertain those here. We're again, all of us, we feel very fortunate to have been able to share our work with you all today. And I'm intentionally staying off camera because if you look at that beautiful headshot of me, that is AI. That is my AI headshot, and I'm starting to use those. That is done with an artistic AI program, and that is 67% me, and the rest of it's AI.
When I got my hair cut, I gave all my students a survey of like AI like generated photos of me with different hair, and I was like, which one of these should I get? And they were like, here you go. It was, I got like 60 something responses. It was pretty helpful.
Nice. I love it. Very cool.
I'm just using a picture from, I don't know, I guess this was last year that I took on campus last winter. So
Cool.
yeah.
Nice.
But that's me.
Thanks. And we want to again thank Professor Wynn, and I want to thank David Cerna for hosting us today. Anytime you guys want to have us back, if you want to have us back, we are happy to come and chat. We love talking about the stuff we do, and we also love hearing about the great things that you all are doing at UDC.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you again. Everyone, yeah, go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, no, I was going to say just thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. Some great ideas, and I may be in touch with you about that prompt engineering webinar. I mean, it seems to all start. It all starts with that. So, yeah.
Sure.
So I will definitely be in touch about that.
Happy to do it.
Yeah, and thank you all for attending. This is the last writing across the curriculum workshop for the fall 2023 semester. But do stay tuned. We will have some through the Center of Advancement and Learning for the spring semester. So we'll have some information about that more in January.
This was a wonderful webinar. I do want to thank you again, Professor Law, and the whole team from Kennesaw. I learned so much, and I took notes throughout, especially those kind of real use cases of AI in our classroom. So thank you again, everyone on this call. I wish everyone the best holiday season. I know Thanksgiving is coming up, so take some time to rest and recharge, and we hope to see you very soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
And I will.
Jeanne, Elizabeth Turner for coming. Thank you, David, for hosting it, and everybody have a great rest of your week, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, sir. Feel better.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I